Good morning and welcome to the daily chapter reading of It's Your Loss, a book about grief. So it's the laughter we will remember whenever we remember the way we were. My mom's still with me. I talk to her now and then. I tell her I love her, and I take both comfort and pain in having found a path that I know she'd be proud of. One of my saddest things in having lost my mom so young is that she never got to see who I became. But I know that she'd have been into it, and she'd love those moments when I'm able to sit with her for a bit too. Remembering and paying tribute to someone or something you lost can be an emotional access point, a chance for connection, and a moment to understand how your relationship with that person or thing is progressing. Because it will change over time, and that's okay, good even. Nothing in this life stands still, and there's no reason your grief will either. Allowing your relationship with it to grow and mature and morph can be life-changing if you let it. How to do a little remembrance when it's all a bit much. Start small. Try to notice if your brain gets a bit clustered when a particular memory floats into view. Maybe write it down so you can look at it later. Think an object attached to the thing you lost and write down a matter-of-fact description of what it looks like. Then expand that to describe the setting you remember it in. Then again to describe what you're doing in that memory. If any emotions come up, note those down too. Sometimes seeing the object is just an object can help us feel safe enough to access the feelings attached to it.
Martindale Station. Doors normally open on the left.
Close your eyes. Think of one happy memory with the thing you lost, a time you were smiling or laughing. Just let yourself feel whatever comes up. Robin on Misty Watercolor Memories. Ways to memorialize things from someone who sees life as a mobile museum of self. I have an absolute leg up on memorializing because it's very much a family tradition on my wild, uncensored Sefton side and my slightly Victorian, don't misbehave please Donaldson side. Both are fiercely proud of where they come from, and we talk about relatives living and mainly dead all the time. I feel I know people I never met or not in a sentient
The
way.
next stop is McKnight Westman Station.
Intimately. They are folklore. Their story is my story. They are countless pictures of them about. I know all about my nanny Nin who died well before I was born. About my granddad's brother who ran over the psychic. That I am related to the famously biggest women in Ormskirk who had to be hoisted out of her, I think, canal boat when she died, and that my great-granny Joe had not one but two chameleons in the war. I also know how he was nearly killed a lot, and that he seldom spoke about that chapter of his life. I know that my super awesome great-great-auntie Eve was one of the first women to own a motorbike in the UK and had a big silver dish she made displayed in the second great exhibition or something like that, because actually no one in my family can actually remember what it was. It's all really bloody nice.
McKnight Westman Station. Doors normally open on the left.
To feel part of a historical tradition of renegades and to be rooted somewhere. I feel honored to have been brought up to feel so proud of where I come from, even the shit bits. My nan's house is very much ground zero for my memory hoarding tendencies. There are photo albums and gallery walls and pieces of jewelry and bits of furniture and war medals and tea sets, and the vast majority comes from our family. They become visual prompts spinning out from the original tale to endless stories about whoever was mentioned, their uncle, his mistress, the milkman, who, if you're wondering, ran off to Spain with all the milk money. It's like having an innate sense of museum preference plaques. I love hearing them and I love telling them. So when Nan died, I was ready to preserve her immediately like some lunatic emotional embalmer.
Whitehorn Station.
I want to gather everything I could and place it around me like a magpie, safe in my shiny little nest of memories. I wore her clothes, her jewelry, her shoes. Luckily, I was in her house, so I was quite literally swaddled in her stuff. I got a tattoo for her about 3 days after she died, as did my brother, despite being told under no uncertain terms not to. Though I'm pretty sure she knew we'd do it anyway. I became fixated on physically keeping her around. Her texts on my phone, the sound of her voice in my head, the smell of her, how she seemed to turn up the heating 10 degrees when she walked into a room because she was just that kind of comfort. I compulsively archived because then maybe I could create a version of her, enough to fill the nan-shaped hole. Not so, unfortunately, because as I've said before, I always have the following response in a time of loss. 1. Get mad, anger. 2. Freak out, fear. 3. Distract myself and try to change something, control. 4. Fall on the floor crying, sadness. Which is impossible if you actually lost it in the forever sense. I do it with clothes, letters, the color of my hair as it grays, even the dog who I've considered cloning. I absolutely did it with Nan. It's a very intense manic period based on a fragile delusion and the need to be doing something. It just ended up making me sadder and very anxious. I lose one of the many things I was traipsing around with. Like the guy who walked through our village with a wheelbarrow of stuff when I was a child and who I was scared shitless of. Anyway, the point is, I'd never really had success with the pseudo-Frankenstein method. It's also a surefire route to becoming a martyr, so instead I'm trying to focus on healthy, realistic ways of memorializing someone or something, which I will handily lay out here in the hope it helps you too. Keep talking. I love Emma. I have been incredibly grateful that someone as uniquely kind, calm, and emotionally intuitive as her has been my primary companion on my biggest loss expedition. I could not have done it without her. She's taught me to look at things in different, less frantic ways and has been a tremendous comfort and an odd sibling parent-pal style. But in retrospect, one thing I should have devoted more time to was corralling Emma into talking about her mom. Because I was talking about my nan all the damn time. I didn't even know Emma's mom's name until fairly recently. Berenice, if it slipped your mind. I didn't know Emma hadn't lived with her from being quite so young or just how tough her mom had it. Because as second nature as my need to discuss things with people, I didn't want to scare the horses. Imagine you've got an incredibly easy to spook nervous horse. Let's, for argument's sake, call it Emma.
Rundle Station.
What you mustn't do is go up to it and throw your arms around it and say, I love you, you're mine now, don't be worried. Because that will really worry Emma, the horse. You have to stand at a distance, whistling with something nice in your hand. For many years, hours. After months of tiny advancements, Emma, the horse, might make it up to your hand, take a tiny nibble, and then career away, and you have to start the whole delicate process again. Now, I didn't go and grab Emma, not the horse, but I also didn't bring her an incentivizing treat. I stood at the other end of the field shouting, "Dude, are you okay?" And she'd be like, "Yeah, absolutely fine." And I'd think, well, I can't push her, so fine it is. What I should have done is ask questions and not stop.
Rundle
In
Station.
a soft way.
Doors normally open on the left.
I know my bud well enough to know she'll give me a no thank you if she doesn't want to discuss things, but equally. I could have been more leading, let her tell me her story, make it feel more natural and less horrifying or just not a big deal. With all her losses, because Lord knows she's had a few, I wish I'd just said, if you can, tell me more about that feeling or moment or person. Because people like Emma don't feel like people want to hear their story, so they don't tell them. Whereas people like me think everyone wants to know, as it's such a jolly good tale. I commit on paper to ask more, my lovely friend. Because talking, above anything, is the single most effective way of keeping someone's memory alive and to add to the picture you already had of them. Less so
The next
with
stop
things,
is Marlborough Station.
but with situations or periods of time where people having a natter about it can be really helpful. Others will add dimensions to the picture you see that you never considered or reinforce what you already knew. Some conversations will be very difficult, like talking about a child you lost, or sibling, or spouse. But you illuminate them when they come into a conversation, I'm sure. They become more courty, and you see the color of their hair was slightly different in someone else's mind, or refill the tinniness of their hand, or tick, tick, tick of their heartbeat. You'll see things from camera 2 instead of camera 1, and to have more to look at when your viewing experience was painfully cut short can be a blessing, albeit a devastatingly bittersweet one. I hope there's comfort in adding to that memory bank. With more straightforward linear losses, these alternative views are more easily absorbed and framed as just glorious reaffirmation. I have heard stories about my Nan's kindness that confirm I have her absolutely right. And to know that she was basically universally seen how I saw her makes me giddy and very proud. Even talking to people very close to you, your views will be fortified, but they also add some bonus material like a director's cut where you learn a little extra about the person or situation. It can work to enhance the scenes you play in your mind, vindicate you for walking away from something, or just act as a blooper's
Marlborough
reel.
Station. Doors normally open on the left.
For me, there's just a cacophony of joy when I speak about people that aren't around anymore, especially with my raucous northern family. Like those shows you see on Victoria Wood or George Michael where people confirmed they were as excellent as you thought and then some. That they had hidden depths you hadn't even anticipated. I am blanketed in those moments, which are primarily filled with laughter, and for a second my Nan or my granny or my crotchery Auntie Mary are just off stage, tantalizingly close. I love it when we come together and celebrate them, because we also cement ourselves back together and re-experience the closeness we had when they were and everything was just a little less shit. So I implore you, find a way to talk about lost things and then they're gone but not forgotten. Museum of Self. Okay, there is something about having a museum of self that screams, I am a psychopath. But I'm not, I promise. A narcissist, certainly, but I don't believe I pose a current threat to the public. I do believe that any space we occupy for a meaningful amount of time should reflect us and what we need back. That we should imbue it with a sense of story, the one we've had and the one we want. That we should be surrounded by things that say something, not just, I got this and IKEA, but this is who I am and where I came from and what inspires me and where I hope to end up. I know that's very much an all-in approach, but for extroverts, big memory placards tend to work a treat. It might sound indulgent, but don't forget it's something we seemed much better at a few decades ago with our display cabinets and portraits and more deeply personal things all out on show. When we didn't have soap operas or Netflix box sets, our heritage was part of the entertainment. It can be tough to work out how to bring that sense of memorialization into the home without setting up 12-feet shrine replete with candles. And if a shrine is your vibe, go for it. But there are ways of memorializing things in a passive, low-key way, as well as whack out the trumpets. I loved my time at trumpet school fashion. You can display things attached to a person or period of time, and by singling them out and giving them a purposeful home, they are elevated. Tickets or postcards or old corks popped in happier times. You can have a memory box if they're just for you, or a ready great shelf if you want to open things up for examination. These historical artifacts are a quick journey to the moments you want to keep hold of, so treasure itself. Or if that's too hard, you can nod into them. Create little tributes, things that are beautiful and meaningful, so you have the option of divulging why they're so beloved. I have a gilded sign of a phrase my Nan used, a print of the weird thing I muttered after first snogging my divorced partner, a tattoo that is just a lovely moon that contains a cloud from an Arthur Rackham illustration my dad got me.